They said that position was lost, that no one would come out alive, that holding the line meant dying within minutes. But one man heard all of that and chose to stay. Not because he believed he would win, not because he thought he was invincible, but because he understood that if he retreated, others would die in his place. In that moment, surrounded, wounded, and alone, he made a silent decision, a decision that never appears on maps, nor in battle plans, a decision that would turn an ordinary soldier into something no one could fully explain afterward. Winter of 1944, Europe. The Second World War had entered its most brutal phase. It was no longer about rapid advances or decisive victories. It was about endurance, resistance, and survival. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. Frozen forests hid men who could no longer feel their fingers. Muddy fields mixed snow, blood, and twisted steel. The cold wasn't only physical, it was psychological. The constant fear of not surviving the next sunrise. That night, an Allied unit was advancing through a region considered vital. Holding that position meant preventing the enemy from breaking through the defensive line. But what they didn't know was that the enemy was already there, in greater numbers, entrenched, waiting. The attack came without warning. Explosions shattered the silence. The ground shook. Screams echoed through the darkness. Within minutes, everything turned to chaos. Officers tried to reorganize men who could no longer tell orders apart from explosions. Radios failed. Messages were lost. The line began to collapse. Soldiers pulled back instinctively, searching for any kind of cover. Some ran. Others froze where they stood. Retreat seemed inevitable. But then, one man did not retreat. He was wounded. The pain was constant. His uniform torn, heavy with mud and snow. Every movement required effort. Every breath burned his lungs. Every military manual would have said the same thing. Fall back, seek medical aid, survive. But he ignored all of it. While the others moved away, he advanced a few meters alone. Just a few meters. But enough to cross an invisible line. And he stayed. There were no reinforcements on the way. No alternate plan. No guarantee that anyone would ever know what he had done. Only the certainty that if no one held that position, the enemy would advance unchecked. The next minutes felt unreal. Time slowed. Every sound became a threat. Every shadow seemed to hide an enemy movement. Then they appeared. Silhouettes in the smoke. Careful footsteps. Weapons ready. He waited. He didn't fire out of panic. He fired with calculation. The first shot echoed sharply. A body fell. The second followed moments later. Another man dropped. The enemy hesitated. They didn't see a unit. They didn't see a platoon. But they also didn't see just one man. It felt like something more. The attack continued. More soldiers advanced. More bullets cut through the air. Shrapnel tore through the snow around him. Ammunition dwindled. Pain intensified. The cold crept deep into his bones. At one point, an explosion struck too close. The blast threw him to the ground. For a few seconds, everything went silent. No movement. No gunfire. Any observer would have been certain. He was dead. But then, he moved. With difficulty, he pulled himself up, using what remained of the cover. His vision blurred. His vision blurred. His hands. He knew he couldn't last much longer. But he also knew that every second mattered. He raised his weapon and fired again. The enemy began to fall back. Not because they had been defeated, but because they didn't understand what they were facing. They believed they were under attack by a much larger force. Perhaps an ambush. Perhaps hidden reinforcements. Fear did what bullets could not. For more than an hour, a single soldier delayed the enemy advance, long enough for his unit to reorganize, for new defensive lines to be established, for command and control to be restored, long enough to save dozens of lives. When he was finally pulled from the position, he could no longer feel his legs. The pain was unbearable, but he was still alive. Days later, reports began to circulate. Officers read and reread the figures. Positions held, advance stopped. Everything pointed to the same improbable conclusion. The actions of one man had changed the outcome of that operation. When he was asked why he stayed, the answer was simple. Almost unsettling. Someone had to stay. The war would continue. Other battles would be fought. Other men would face impossible choices. But that specific moment,
That silent instant when he chose not to retreat changed the fate of far more people than he would ever know. Stories like this are not about the absence of fear. They are about acting despite it, about standing when everyone else retreats, about choosing responsibility over personal safety. One man, one moment, one decision, capable of altering the course of history. If stories like this deserve to be remembered, leave a like. These accounts are not just about war, but about the impact a single choice can have when everything seems lost. Subscribe for more real stories from the Second World War. Stories that sound exaggerated, but happened.